I'm Tom Gentry, and this is the Connected Calm Life.
Yes. Welcome back. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Lane.
So
It's
good to
great
have
to
you
be
on the
here.
show.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is a long time coming, friend.
It is very much so.
What I love about COVID life is meeting really incredible people that I would not have met, right? Like I would have never met you.
Probably not.
I mean, maybe I would have
It's
landed
conceivable, but not probable.
Correct. I could have gone to Florida and been on the street and saw you and gone to
Right.
I do have family in Florida, but not likely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really great. One of the benefits of COVID life is having social apps and using social media to find my people. You're one of my people.
I am, and you're one of mine. Yeah, it's funny how if for me, my experience with it has been that it has enabled me to hone in on the people who are really my people.
Mm-hmm.
To where if I was limited to just the social group around me in proximity, it might have been a lot harder to find my people.
Define your people.
My people come from a place of love first.
Mm-hmm.
My people are spiritually grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And my people are interesting.
Yes.
And they have backbone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So true. I like that a lot. Backbone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah, I think my people are very similar, grounded in love, spiritually centered, spiritually fit,
Mm-hmm.
willing to do the work, right? Willing to show up when it's really hard. You and I have had some hard times on our path over the past year and a half, whatever it's been. Being able to have challenging conversations. I really like to have challenging conversations.
You like to have challenging conversations, or you like to have relationships that are worth investing challenging conversations?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I like having challenging conversations because they stimulate my brain. I like having relationships that are capable of holding that space.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you don't really find that a lot of times, because a lot of people will just run away. They're just like, nope, I'm not going there. I'm not doing that. I'm done. It hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings. And I don't know how to handle this.
They might even retaliate somehow.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know you through the Sobriety Clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking when we first met there, you were, how long are you in recovery?
25 years, Lane.
25 years. Yeah. And I think that's why you resonated so deeply with me, because when you're walking that path with someone else, they can say or do something that resonates.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you had the capacity to have these conversations. Right?
Yeah. I may have been groomed for it my entire life in one way or another.
Right. You have like eight siblings?
I'm the youngest of 8 siblings.
Yeah. You've been groomed for sure.
Yeah. Sure. Well, there's a lot going on when you grow up in a home like that.
That is a lot.
And yeah, alcoholism, I mean, just that's a lot.
It is a lot. When did you realize that you had a problem with substance, or that you were an addict, suffered from alcoholism?
Well, I was worried about turning 21.
Uh-huh.
I knew having unfettered access to alcohol, unlimited access to alcohol could be problematic.
See, you thought about that? See, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That is not even on my radar.
Well, I was, crashing my bike on my paper route and getting kicked out of the YMCA at 13 years old because I smelled like whiskey.
Oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Yeah.
So you started drinking young.
Yeah. I really don't even know how young I was when I had my first drink. Mm-hmm. Pretty young.
Pretty young. I know. I think about now, I was 12 when I had my first Bacardi and splash of Pepsi. Ugh. And my son is 12. Mm-hmm. And I think, holy bejesus.
Yeah. I've had that same experience. I have a son who will be 16 in April.
Yeah.
So I was already
right
in trouble by the time I was 13, for sure.
It's really, it's so great to be able to reflect as a sober parent, to know that the values that I've grown up with in recovery are now being used in my relationships and in, teaching my son. Mm-hmm. And one of these values is around worth and being able to validate self in a positive manner. Because we're all walking around with so much ego. Right? What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think we have a lot of ego or not enough? Or do you think the ego is like waiting for the perfect time to announce itself? What do you think?
My thoughts on the ego. Well, I look at it like the ego is one of two opposite forces that I can be aligned with. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in ego, it's selfish, it's not loving, it's not the greatest good. Mm-hmm. And for me, like kind of where I'm at in my spiritual development at this point is I've studied A Course in Miracles that makes the distinction between the ego and the Holy Spirit. And when the Holy Spirit, meaning, just coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
And that the ego kind of wants to destroy us. It wants us to be in fear, wants us to be in conflict, where, that's not really the optimal way to live now.
Well, right. I mean, and I think this is where this idea of worth comes in, right? This when we're stuck or when we're betrayed by the ego, we are living in fear. Mm-hmm. We're living in judgment. We're living in a lot of pain. But oftentimes what I find for myself is that I don't even recognize it because it's hard to see through that veil sometimes. And I have to get into my practice to be able to puncture that veil. And sometimes I don't want to. Does that make sense to you? Does that resonate? Are you able to?
Yeah.
When you talk, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
When you mention that, what I think about is, I have this expression, oh yeah, God, there's God. Like that is the human condition for me, that whatever I'm doing in life, I always forget that God has to be at the center of it. And I'm always coming back to that. And the answer is always there somewhere. Somewhere. But it's definitely not Tom wandering off away from God up in his own head. It's not that.
Have you always used the G.O.D word?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a Catholic home and never really bought all the dogma. And part of my early recovery, a milestone for me, was having someone say, it's okay to believe what you believe. In fact, it's good. That's enough. And that was validating and helped me let go of the shame, because I thought, because I didn't believe all this stuff, that there was something wrong with me, because that's what I was taught. But I think, some of the things we deal with in early recovery, like how am I going to identify myself at a meeting? Or what am I going to call God? Mm-hmm. And I call God God because it seems like the most convenient thing to call it, mm-hmm. And I like to think of it as, well, I believe God is love. Love is God. God is love. Mm-hmm. I believe God is in us, that he is part of us and we are part of him, and that we're all really connected to each other. Even though, and that's what's really sad about modern life. There's so much division.
Yeah.
And which back to the Course in Miracles refers to it as the illusion of separation. Mm-hmm. We're not really separate.
No.
We're not separate from God, and we're not separate from each other.
How did you find the Course in Miracles? Well, I mean, what was that kind of path? Because I know 20 years ago, maybe 22 years ago, there was a lot of
chatter. Well, there was a lot of it around when I first got sober.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew that it existed. I knew that there were groups that took place around here. And then as time went on, and I've worked in the addiction treatment field pretty much the entire time mm-hmm. I've been sober. And I started to make a connection that the people who I really respected, mm-hmm. And eventually I would learn that at one time or another, they studied the Course in Miracles.
Right.
So I had it in the back of my mind for probably 20 years that I wanted to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. But if you see the book, I mean, it's an enormous book, and it's, it's, I don't think it's really meant to be just read individually.
It's like a textbook. Anyway, I mean, it's a textbook. It is a course.
It's a course. Yeah. There are lessons. Yeah. So, but what happened is eventually, I went through a divorce and then a very painful next relationship after the divorce, mm-hmm. and found myself working on codependency and adult child issues. Mm-hmm. And found myself in ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholic and Dysfunctional Families, mm-hmm. where I felt like, wow, man, I really belong here. But I started to get connected to people there. And then one time, this guy who he and I were talking, hey, what are you doing tonight? And he ended up inviting me to a group of the course. And I went, and I just felt like I was enveloped in love. Mm-hmm. They knew it. I told them it was my first time, and they just honored me, explained everything to me, seemed really, really happy for me. It just felt great. Mm-hmm. It felt really, really good. And some of them were people I already knew.
Did it fill you up?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It filled me up.
It's like spiritual food.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to go back to the statement, it's okay to believe in what you believe. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times we come into recovery and we're trying to find what we believe. We're trying mm-hmm. to shape our faith or shape these ideas. And how did you come to believe or start to shape this idea? Was the Course in Miracles, did that have anything to do with it? Or I guess
no, that was much later.
I was going to say you didn't find that for 20 years, I guess. That's what you just said.
Right. Pretty much.
So it's only been in the last 5 years then that you've gone deep within your spiritual path?
In that way.
Yeah.
In that way. Yeah.
So the first 20 years then, your faith was around what?
Well, a personal connection with God.
Yeah.
And I think what is really different about my spiritual state prior to sobriety, it was that I might have had some faith, but I didn't have trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then in sobriety, I learned that no, you got to exercise trust.
Mm-hmm.
We trust God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just something that shows up and oh yeah, I trust God. No, we have to do it. Like it's a decision. And really one of the things I loved about the 12 steps immediately when I entered recovery was, there are these spiritual principles underlying each of them. And I may not be able to work all the steps all at once, but I can practice the principles right away. And I really was able to see the connection between living a spiritual life, living a principled life, practicing spiritual principles,
Mm-hmm.
and faith, God. It all made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all consistent with what I actually believed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was taught the principles early on, maybe my third year, second year in, and I, I thought, oh, this is brilliant. Like there was a different meaning. There was a different light bulb went off in my head because sometimes I couldn't relate to the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of, hearing you talk about that put my spiritual path, like swerved it off. And I went down the Buddhist path, right? I went down that path and really went on a quest. And at 5 years, I moved to another country and practiced. And because of the principles, and the principles are universal and they've been around for eons. And so when I live today, right, I'm using those spiritual principles in my life. Like I practice having faith. I practice having value. I practice having worth every day. Because if I'm not, then I'm not feeling very good. like, and then I get myself into sticky situations and life becomes challenging. Over the years, your kiddo, you had him in sobriety, which is really cool.
Yeah.
What has been one of these turning moments where you've had to really lean into your faith?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, I was really off track from a vocational standpoint as a kid.
What does that mean?
That means there were things I wanted to do, and I had the people in my life who were there to nurture me, tell me, nah, you shouldn't do that. Like you should be, people always need a plumber, like, what are you going to do? Flip hamburgers so you can write? Like I had people saying that kind of stuff to me.
So did you have a vision? Did you have a vision like, I want to write? Did you have an early vision like, this is what I want to do?
My self-esteem distorted it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
My self-esteem was so low. But what happened is I decided to take a year off after high school, and I was going to work full time, and I got a construction job, and 19 came around and it was winter and I wasn't in school anymore. And I was working on this job site and the foreman was a jerk and he was screaming at me. And it was like, what happened? What did I do to my life? Why am I here? And I felt stuck.
Yeah.
And that was when I first consciously chose to drink to change the way I felt, to blot it out. That's what I did. And I thought I was stuck. I really felt stuck. I was stuck in fear.
Yeah.
And so anyway, getting sober was reckoning with that. Right. And by the time I got sober, I had already been a published writer. I'd written for my local newspaper, and I I can write. I could always write. And then but it was like a part-time thing. I was working full-time as a carpenter and going to
Yeah.
school. I was all over the place. And what I was doing is filling up all my time so I
Yep.
wouldn't have time to drink. And then I was rushing through it all so I would have time to drink. It was a mess. And then it all came crashing down. And then it was, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And what I did at that point, in brief, was invest in my recovery, make enough money to put gas in my truck and food on the table and get me to meetings and go to as many as I possibly could. And that's what I did. And then it just kind of made sense at a year and a half. People had been telling me, you'd be good at this kind of work. And the place I went was a Hazelden facility, which was a great place to work. And I got a job there. And they trained me as a counselor, and all of it was included free, so why not take advantage of it? And then, but I also kind of knew I didn't really want to be a counselor. I had all this interest in media, and I didn't want my life to be defined by recovery. And so when I left that job, I got the job working for a publisher, and at one point was the assistant to the publisher himself. And then that didn't work out, and I kind of floundered around, and I realized all the really great opportunities I was getting were in addiction treatment. And like cool opportunities. And then it hit me like, okay, I hear you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet it was really easy too, right? Like these opportunities just kind of slid into your lap.
Yeah. A career defining opportunity.
Right.
But I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. This is what you want from me. Ultimately, my recovery, my life is about being of service.
Okay. How long were you sober when that, like, okay, I'm surrendered, I'm just going to do what you want?
Maybe 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it took a while. So there's something that I want to get into a little bit, this idea of being stuck, because I think there's a lot of people that feel stuck at every, you could be 1 year sober, you could be 20 years sober, you could be 30 years sober, you could be 15, like this idea of really getting stuck or complacent in recovery, that happens as well. And I liked that you had this, that you invested in your recovery, that you took that moment and realized, oh, like, I guess this is what I'm going to be doing. Like you paused. It sounded like you took a hard pause instead of kind of moving through things and doing whatever.
Well, I saw other people failing too.
Yeah.
I saw what they were doing, and I learned by their negative examples.
Right. Okay.
And what I saw is, okay, the guys who focus on the job or fitness or the girlfriend or all three or whatever, they don't stick around.
And this idea that you didn't want your life to be about recovery. So I didn't want my life to be about recovery either. Like I was like, I'm not going down that path. And, like, no, I'm not doing that. But ultimately, when we're of service, there is this power that's working. And here I am in a podcast talking about recovery. There you are working in addiction, and right? Like you're in it. And it's really fulfilling. I find it very fulfilling. At a whole new, like, talk about filling up my cup and giving me a sense of value or sense of self-worth. And it's so easy. Like it's literally so easy.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I just look at it a little differently than I used to. People are lost.
Oh,
I
so
was
many.
lost. I
Yep.
was
Yep.
lost. That's what it was. Wasn't
Yep.
about the alcohol.
Yep.
I was lost. And I think, if you want to go with the Ram Dass thing, we're all finding our way home and we're
Yeah.
leading people home. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And for me, like the podcast that I have, it's about recovery sometimes, but it's really about finding your way home. And
Yeah.
how did you find your way in life to become
Mm-hmm.
who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, recovery has definitely been about me becoming more me, becoming who I am, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's the journey of recovery. And we don't know it
Right.
until we've got some time. I mean, we're 25 into this little game here, and
Right.
like it's like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Like I have
Yeah.
a really good friend. She's 35, 34, and it's a different conversation. But what I'll say is that there is this sense of like the ownership of my life and recovery in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really great, like, there's freedom in
Mm-hmm.
knowing that recovery is now is threaded through me,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the resource that allows me to do all the other great things in life.
Right.
And I'll forget that. I will literally forget. So that's again why I go back to the ocean of yum, and I keep my practice and I do all the things that I do, because I'm going to forget. Do you forget
Well,
things?
it's the glue that holds it all together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when I hear people share in rooms of recovery,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um, when they talk about the recovery as if it's separate from
Mm-hmm.
everything else,
Right.
no,
Mm-mm.
it's not.
No, it's
It's
not.
all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not separate.
So,
A recovery is about life. That's what it's
yes,
about.
that's what it's about.
Everything.
When you got into the Course of Miracles, did that shift your recovery?
You know what it did is it helped me in my close personal relationships a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
It helped me see how I was bringing my stuff
Mm-hmm.
into specifically romantic relationships. And I was viewing people through a cloudy lens,
Yeah.
that it was clouded with my stuff.
Mm. And what I love is that here we are with this amount of time, and we're still on the search,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Well,
still,
that was a dot I connected pretty early on. The people who stick around keep growing.
yeah,
This doesn't end.
no, it does not end. I find it really interesting when people are not involved in their recovery, and I listen to them with great intent. Like I'm like, ooh, what's happening there? And sometimes, they sound totally fine, and sometimes they don't. And I just like it's so everybody is so individual and unique. And I think that's one of the things I love about recovery is that there's not a one way, this is how it's
Mm.
done. And I know people who, find religion, just going to call it out, and then they never drink again. I'm always like, whoa,
I know
okay.
people who it was yoga
Yes.
that eventually that's what made the difference for them after relapse after relapse after relapse.
Yeah. It's it's such a gift to be able to be on that quest. It's like a vision quest, like something's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And to just follow faith, I guess. It's like having
Mm-hmm.
faith in something that you're going to get through it. I want to go back to your relationship with your kiddo, because that excites me when I think, having a sober dad, sober relationship with your kid, just like I'm doing, sober mom, sober relationship with my kid. And how do you talk to them about faith? Is it an open conversation? Because with my son, I'll say, hey, what do you think? What you like G.O.D? And he's like, Mom, we're not talking about that. I'm like, okay. How do you put it out there?
Um, well, it was always important to me not to necessarily impose my specific beliefs
Mm-hmm.
onto my son, aside from there is a God and he's there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll remind him to pray sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And generally it's like I did, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um and just he knows there's a God.
Yeah. I think that's cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, he's been around this his whole life. His
Mm-hmm.
mom's a
Mm-hmm.
therapist. We both worked at a treatment center together.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
he's grown up around it. He's been with me to pick up medallions and
Yeah.
has known me as a sober man, only as a sober man. And he knows that one of the really cool things that would happen is, I've always carried a medallion,
Mm-hmm.
and usually I pick it up and I kiss it before I put it in my pocket in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And, when he was really little, he'd say, let me see it. And then he'd kiss it too and hand it to me,
Oh,
you know?
so sweet.
So, I mean, he's watched me
Mm-hmm.
lead a spiritual life.
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing I could do for him, is
Yeah.
just be me and follow my path and
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate that for him,
Mm-hmm.
because awful lot of people talk about it and don't live it.
Mm-hmm.
And kids see through that stuff.
So true.
Yeah.
They are watching everything. Yeah. He picks up everything.
Mm-hmm.
I started to talk to him about straight edge, I think maybe like right before the pandemic hit. And he kind of got into that a little bit, which I was excited about. Uh, but I leave it wide open for him to discover
Mm-hmm.
himself wherever he's going to go, whatever he's going to do. He does know that he feels different when he's in a room with me with others that are
Mm-hmm.
practicing. Uh, I have taken him into rooms where I teach, and he'll just be like, "Whoa, mom!" like,
Well, you can feel it.
yeah, you can feel it. You can feel it, and that I think is really magical to have sober parents, share that with kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, can you believe our time is like we're here
We're
at the
winding
end?
down. Is that what
We're
we're doing?
winding down. I can't believe it. Like I just looked at the clock. Yeah. Uh, what else, Tom?
What else? I don't know, Lane. What do you want to know?
No. Maybe we can just put a bow on it right there.
Well, how about this? Why me? Why did you ask me to be on the show?
So I love the purpose of the show is to have conversations with people who have long-term recovery
Okay.
and to really get into a topic because it's topic driven and to show that recovery is there's so many people, different ways, different styles, and to show others that it's worth it,
Mm-hmm.
that you can stay the long haul and grow and try out different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I know that you've done a lot of different things in your recovery and you've gone through relationships in your recovery. And I knew that you would bring that to the show today because you're an authentic human.
Thank you.
You're one of
Well,
my
so the
people.
topic was value,
Worth, value, and faith.
worth, value, and faith.
And I think we covered it. I mean, that's yeah.
Well, I know for me, being in my active alcoholism, I devalued myself.
Correct.
I undervalued myself.
Yeah.
And I've also done that in recovery.
Mm.
And that, to me, that's part of the path is, the more we become who we are, the more we see our inherent value.
Mm-hmm.
And, like one guy who sponsored me, I heard him share in a meeting one time, I get paid to be me.
Yeah.
What's better than that? I get paid
Mm.
to be me, and I get paid to be me.
Yeah.
And the more true I am to myself,
Yep.
the more effective I am, the more satisfying I am, the more value I bring.
Yep.
So
I literally just had this conversation this morning with somebody. I love that you just brought that up. I cannot, it's so funny. See, and that is how the G.O.D works in my life, right? It just reiterates something, tickles me. It makes me feel so, it just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And laughter, like I didn't have laughter in my life before. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So delicious.
Delicious.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. We got to get you on my show. We've tried. We've had a couple near misses.
Yeah. I'll be there soon.
We'll get it.
All right, Tom. Thanks so much. Everyone, have a beautiful moment. Thank you for hanging out with us. May you find something bright, something light, and something so delicious it fills you up so you can be the best I know you can be. Until next time, take good.
Be well.